what I'd like you to do is give me just a 1 minute, what you bring to the table in experience and what your key issues are. I don't need you to expand on your key issues. I just want to find out what they are. And we'll go down with everybody, and then I'll sort of see where your guys' issues are and how it matches up with what our issues are, and then we'll go into the issues themselves, okay? So just give me your top 3 issues, say, and what you bring to the table.
Okay, so my name's Rene Matsumoto. I've been a resident for 17 years of San Ramon and been involved with school board initiatives, as well as 17 years in PTA, athletic boosters. I'm a graduate of the San Ramon leadership class. And being involved in the community, I think it has allowed me to get a unique perspective of the citizens' desires and the direction that what the city needs. So what I hope to do is be out in the community and have an opportunity to continue to meet with citizens and let their voices be heard. The issues that I would like to see continue for the quality of life of San Ramon are open space, fiscal accountability, and would like to also see the city center come forward.
Thomas.
Yes. I'm a lawyer, have been for a long time. Lived in San Ramon for 16, 17 years now. And for me, the issue is the continued urbanization of San Ramon, in particular high-density developments, commercial and residential, which I am vehemently opposed to. And I have a long history of standing my positions and being able to say no. And I guess that's what I bring to the table, opposition to the continued high-density developments that are being proposed. I have a copy of my candidate statement if you want to have a
That's
copy.
okay. I got the thing you sent to register our voters.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Harry?
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Harry Sachs. I've lived in San Ramon since 1999. My wife and 3 children, they go to the schools down there. I've served on the Planning Commission since 2006. I'm a teacher. I teach in Fremont Unified School District. I teach 8th grade middle school history. Tomorrow's the first day, so here we go. Yes. Well, I much enjoy it. Prior to being an 8th grade teacher, I taught 3rd grade for 7 years. I've been an educator since 1998. I'm running for city council. Really, the primary issues for me are how we grow the city.
By the way, in some cities, that would make you uniquely qualified to serve on the city council.
Being an educator.
No, having taught 3rd grade students in
Go.
some cities, yeah.
Boy,
Go
I
ahead.
tell you, great,
Okay, go ahead.
great
I'm
stuff.
sorry.
No, for me, really, the big issues and why I'm running are the growth of the city going forward, the promotion of open space preservation, and making sure that San Ramon continues with its financial stability that we've had. We have some barriers right now. We have some structural deficit issues going forward, and I think my leadership that I've had the last 10 years in the city qualify me to put myself forward to the voters for their consideration.
Dave.
Okay. I'm Dave Hudson. The city of San Ramon's 30 years old. I've served 20 of them at City Hall as your mayor, city councilman, or planning commissioner. My top priorities are get that city center built with no new taxes with the public-private partnership we've already contracted with. I think the next issue that cannot delay at all is the elementary school we were promised in the last bond issue. And then third, I would strongly suggest that we take care of any pension reform issues and unfunded liabilities that I don't have to tell this board about.
What's the elementary school?
The elementary school-
And in terms of how's that a city issue? I'm sorry.
The city joined in very strongly with that bond issue because we know that we would be underbuilt with elementary schools, primarily in Doherty Valley. If we don't do it, we're going to have 5,400 students in 4 elementary schools. That's just unacceptable. So we went together with the school district. I'm going to go past my 1 minute, Dan. Is that okay? Just to explain this?
Just make it real quickly. I just want a quick.
We are doing a joint agreement with the school district to come up with a 5th campus and build a 5th elementary school in Doherty Valley to relieve the overcrowding. And then
Okay.
above and beyond everything else, you've got to keep your property values up. San Ramon has the highest total property evaluation of any city in the county, and I don't want to see that go. My wife Barbara and I have raised our 3 children here. We love our community and be honored to get the support of the people in this
Okay.
election.
So let's start. You all kind of talked, or most of you sort of talked about financial stability. Let's talk, and let's start with you, Dave.
Mhm.
Give me your assessment, sort of quickly and succinctly, of where you see the city finances are and what needs to be done.
Well, I think the good news is offhand, after serving on CCTA, I can see that our sales tax are up 8.8%. That's going to go a long ways towards what was a structural deficit. I think we have it under control. The main thing we're going to have to do is not take $1.5 million from the general fund towards our local road repair. We were doing that to try and stay at the 75 PCI that ABAG's mandating with one Bay Area. I believe that you will see CCTA, I might not be letting the cat out of the bag on this, we'll come up with another bond measure next year. And I've already advanced the fact that there will have to be 23% return to source. Others are going higher. And I think that
Okay,
will take
wait a
care of the
minute,
roads.
Let's, there's a structural deficit. What's the solution to it?
Well, the main reason there's a structural deficit was redevelopment. We initially have cut back, made our 10% cuts that were recommended from staff. The next thing I believe we have to do is cut $1.5 million out of the budget that was going to go for local roads and repair. That would be out of the general fund. We still have the return to source money from Measure J that's coming in there. And obviously all the cities are going to have to support this bond measure to keep the road
So
repair.
you would reduce the road repair.
There was a special, not assessment, Dan, but Scott Perkins and I were on a separate 2-person committee of how to get our road pavement condition index up to 75. We were slipping below it. And we had recommended $1.5 million a year out of the general fund to do it. That is going to have to be pulled. That alone will put us at out of the structural deficit we're talking about. More importantly, we've got to make up our mind what is going to be the bottom line in reserves. To me, that's 30 million. I won't go below 30 million. We're a little above 29, but when you have mid-year, you're going to find out we're above that number. If in the mid-year review we propose to go below 30 million, I won't vote for it.
Okay, and what would you do on pensions?
Well, the pension's exactly where it is. Can we do more than a minute?
No?
Okay.
What would you do on pensions?
The pensions, we would continue to do what we've been doing. We do not have the 26 cents over a dollar that you talked about on average. San Ramon has, we're talking about safety officers. San Ramon has the lowest number of sworn officers per 1,000-person residents of any city in the county. And we have held that and have still received certificate for being the 87th safest city in America. We're also the safest city in California,
My question
over
is, what would
30,000.
you do on pensions?
The pension's exactly what the state did, Dan. I agree with everything you said in San Diego except one. I do not agree that it should be split between the police officers and the city. Instead of what Jerry Brown did, where he put a definitive cost on the police officers, it should be the cities that have the definitive cost. And we should not be going over 10 cents per
Okay,
dollar.
so what would you do with your existing police officers on pensions?
They're going to be paying, just like our staff is now paying, 2% into their retirement from their own cost, and it will go up 2% each year until we meet the state mandate.
But you don't have that right now.
Yes,
right?
we do have it.
I believe the latest is 1 out of 9, right? One out of 9% of payroll is being paid by the police.
We're in negotiations. You can't know that, Dan. I'm sorry. You are, unless somebody's telling you something. Currently, we are in negotiations with our association right now, and we are changing it over. It should be in the next 30 to 45 days that you'll know exactly. And I can't talk out of what's in closed session.
Okay,
I'm
well,
telling you it's 2% that we're making the other employees do it, and you can.
And what would your goal be?
My goal would be that all the employees are doing the same thing until it gets up to the state mandate where it's half and half. And I do not believe that it should be, as you said, well, I don't even believe it should be half and half. I believe it should be that the city is not paying more than 10, period.
Harry?
With regards to the structural deficit issues, really there's been a paradigm shift, I think, over the last several years. Part of it has been the growth of the city. We're so reliant on property taxes and the assumptions that were made in the early 2000s on property tax revenue. After 2008, what we've seen is property taxes have gone down 33% in our city, and so we have shortfalls with regard to revenue. So you couple that with the limited opportunities for growth in the development of housing units, we're going to have to make and shift our paradigm away from relying on property tax, A, to increasing sales tax. I think that's why the city center is so important. B, I have been proposing that we ask the voters to increase the hotel tax, the transit occupancy tax. We are at 7.25%, as you know, and I think that we should either incrementally or at one step, depending on the dialogue with the council going forward, increase that up to what the other cities are doing, which is be around 10%. That
wouldn't raise a lot of money.
Well, it would raise about $300,000 to $400,000, which helps. Again, when you start talking about budget issues at a state level, that's not going to do much, $300,000 to $400,000. But on a city level, though, it is significant. It's one piece of a puzzle. In terms of other things in the budget, when you take a look at retiree health care costs, right now, when you look at our total payout for employee benefits, including our pension obligation bond, it's about $33 million in indebtedness. So we've got $17 million of that on the pension side. You've got retiree health. I believe we should have, in our working, the council has been extending out the pay in terms of retiree, going from 50 to 55 and from 50 to age 57. On that, I think we have to look at going a little further. Maybe the peace officers are a little different story because of the wear and tear of their profession, and we've got to think about that. But for miscellaneous employees, maybe we look at age 60 as a payout. What that would do is it takes a few years off of the retiree health obligations that we have already at 65.
Okay, let's. Are you talking about changing the formulas?
Well, that's not up to us. I mean, those are PERS. We have changed the formulas. I'm talking about changing the years where you'd be eligible for that. So, for example, right now, a miscellaneous
Years where you'd be eligible for what?
For retirement, for full vesting at your retirement. So right now, it's
You're talking about for pension?
2% at age 57. Okay, and so I would say, hey, let's have this discussion dialogue. Why 57? Let's bring that out to
Well,
age
you're talking
60.
about changing the formula.
Then that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and for new employees, that's set in the new pension reform law, and for old employees, you really can't change that. So I'm
Right.
not quite sure what you're advocating.
Well, what we have right now for new employees is the ability to increase the amount that they contribute for
Yes,
PERS.
you do. Now,
And
that's a different issue.
Yes.
Are you advocating increasing the amount they contribute?
Yes, as a teacher, I pay 8.25%. I think it should be a 50-50 split on that. That's going to help with regards to some of the long-term pension obligations that we have.
Thomas?
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, it was sort of two-part. One is sort of an overview of where you see the city finances, and then I zeroed in on specifically pension and retirement costs.
Okay.
So you can
I
take them
haven't
in
really
two steps.
focused on the financial issues. I know there's I think a 1.4 million or so shortfall in the budget this year, as I recall. Relative to other government entities, I think that's pretty good nowadays, but obviously needs to be addressed. On the pension issue, I believe there's negotiations going on, and I would hope that both sides are reasonable.
What do you
Uh,
consider reasonable?
Well, I think a lot of that's gonna depend on the mix of compensation versus benefits, and who's gonna pay for it, and how much the employees in San Ramon pay versus other public employees in the state. And I don't have the facts on that. I do think we have first-rate employees in San Ramon and first-rate police and fire. But everything comes down to being
What's a
reasonable.
fair pension contribution?
You know, again, I think that depends on their overall compensation. Otherwise, it's part of the total compensation package. I haven't studied it, and I'm not gonna take a specific position on it. I will state that I'm opposed to any new taxes or fees, and that whatever the pension negotiations end up as, we have to balance the budget with other ways.
Matt?
Yes, I am currently familiarizing myself with both the budget and the pension situation. I am aware that with regards to the budget, there was a $4 million deficit, and I believe it is down to 1.4 million at this time. I do know that in reading the information that there was a cut from the TV 30. I believe that saved 118, I think it was, $1,000 into the budget, as well as Jordan and Associates, I believe. So that also saved another, I want to say, 12,000, something like that. So I would agree with Harry that I would like to see more taxes, whether it be hotel, tobacco, whatever we can do to increase those taxes to get additional income. With regards to pension.
Whether it be hotel or what?
Cigarette sale taxes, anything like that that we can collect. With regards to.
So let me understand.
Yes.
What Harry was proposing was increasing the hotel tax. What are you proposing with cigarette sales taxes?
So I believe we can possibly get sales from those a portion of money from cigarette sales.
Can you?
I think we're going to look into that.
Okay.
I'm not positive.
You said you'd like to see more taxes. Any others?
Not at this time. Just,
Okay.
I agree with, we need to look at other cities and what they are doing and also try to implement those if they would help our city.
I honestly don't know whether an individual city can raise cigarette sales tax.
Okay.
Does anyone know?
No? Okay.
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 Then I
Pensions?
can take that off then. With regards to pensions, again, I'm familiarizing myself at this time. I am aware of concerns that you might have with regards to public versus private pensions, how people can spike that pension. And I would like to also see that more people put money into their own pension. And I've been following a lot of your articles too.
And so, what would you like to see? How much would you like to see people put into their pension?
That I have not studied.
Okay.
Retirement, health.
Okay, there's been some discussion of city center here. Let's talk about city center. And let's start with you, Harry.
Sure.
You were a pretty strong advocate back in 2006-07 of city center as it was being proposed then.
Yes.
Tell me why, and tell me
Sure.
and tell me where you are today.
I'm still a strong advocate, even more so. I've had the opportunity now since July 30th to walk about 4,000 homes in South San Ramon. The number one thing when I ask people, any rants, any raves, above anything else, when is the downtown going to get built? When is City Center going to get built? It's the one
Okay,
consistent.
let me,
Sure.
and there may be, I don't know, maybe Thomas may be in this crowd and might disagree. I just have a hunch just reading you guys, but maybe not. But for the most part, the issue isn't, I've been through, this is probably the third series of elections of Ed Boards with candidates coming in here saying, everybody says they want the city center, and they've walked precincts and all. Maybe it's the fourth.
Right,
I was
well,
looking up the second before I came in here.
To be general, a downtown in San Ramon is a starting point,
okay.
right?
The issue is not whether people want a city center. The issue is, for the most part, what I'd like you to address is the details. And
Sure.
and to kick this off, as I recall, way back when you were very critical of people who were critical of the project.
Right.
Yes,
I think, well, so
and,
let me-
and so my question to you is, did you support the project back then? And by the project, I don't mean just the building, I mean the financing and so forth.
Good. As a planning commissioner, we were not engaged in any of the discussions regarding the financing. Those are city council issues, city manager issues with Sunset Development. What we simply had as planning commissioners was the land use part of the project,
Okay.
to be clear, okay? And I supported that. Now, we knew in general terms that upon completion of this project, it would provide San Ramon with a share of sales tax revenue that it did not have, and that there would hopefully be some opportunities to recoup property tax revenue. As you know, Bishop Ranch has excluded itself from being a part of San Ramon. That's county land, and the county has been getting property tax from Bishop Ranch. San Ramon has not. So this opened up new opportunities for us going forward. San Ramon is greatly underserved with regards to its retail opportunities. And also, I really felt that a city hall civic component, which at that time was going to be a library city hall component on one of those 4 lots, was very important for the city going forward. My understanding is, due to the changes in the economy, this project is going to be scaled back a little bit. The specifics of financing are still within the council and the city manager's domain, but it's going to be more boutique. It's not going to be big box. There's going to be opportunities for housing within the project, and it will provide some sort of civic component. I feel real confident in my talks this morning with Sunset Development that they are very much in tune with the traffic management that we're looking for. We do have issues.
Our concern, if you read our editorials from the past, has not been the specifics of the construction and the planning of the project. Our concern has been with the finances of the project. What do you know about the finances of the project?
So what I know is that the city basically would, and this is in general, again, I'm not privy to specifics, would basically be trading 2 parcels of land for the construction of the buildings and be getting a portion of the sales tax take. That's what I know.
And is that a good deal or a bad deal for the city?
Well, I think it's what is the going deal for municipalities. We could sell those.
Is there a
So what? So
is there a benchmark when you say the going deal for municipalities? Is there a benchmark against which you would measure that?
I cannot tell you that specifically. I wanted to say Santana Row, but I cannot empirically show you that the city owned those parcels of land and sold them to Federal Realty. So I don't want to say that I know.
Let me just ask you one question more and
Go
then
ahead.
move on to somebody else. Has your feeling, when you were so strongly in support of it 5 years ago, how informed were you about the financing of the project at the time?
5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, I believe you even wrote a letter to the editor at the time.
Right, supporting the general the concepts.
Mhm.
Again, as I said, not very, but we knew in general terms, as I've just described, that this would be sort of the mechanisms of funding going forward. That Sunset would basically build the buildings through their construction companies, and the city, by turning over the land, would get the revenue.
Okay.
I think, to answer your question, is this a good deal for the city? I think it is, given the fact that you have existing uses that Sunset can interact. I do think the city is going to be able to use that sales tax revenue that they don't have right now should we get this constructed. And I think the city couldn't build that on their own, right? I mean, obviously. So you either sell the land straight out, and then the sales tax and
Okay,
property
let me
tax.
just ask you one more question, then
Sure,
I
go
want to
ahead.
move on. If you don't know the numbers, how do you know that it's a good deal for the city?
That's a good question. I place faith in our city manager and our councils at the time. They don't always bat 1,000, but I do believe the project going forward is going to be a benefit not only to the city in terms of its financials, but the residents as well.
Okay. Dave?
I had a feeling you were going to go right instead of left. Go for it.
Do you know the questions? Give me your assessment of where things are at with city center and why it is or isn't a good idea.
Well, there's more
mean,
than
I
a minute's
know-
worth of good ideas. One is it's a transit livable community, which if you're not doing that right now, you're not going to get it. Second, and the reason why I don't agree with Harry, I don't want to raise the TOT because I want
DOT.
TOT, Transit Occupancy Tax.
Okay.
And the reason I don't want to do it is because I want the hotels full. They are generating the sales tax to this city center we're planning on building. And our property tax, this is not in the county. It wasn't in the county when we formed a city. We annexed them and have agreements on how to split the property tax and how to split the sales tax. The county has come back to the table and renewed or renegotiated. We do get part of these property tax. It is very important to us. We would collect $2.5 million annually in sales tax, and so would CCTA. This has not been included in their income over the next 25 years of Measure J. I do know the finances on it, and you're going to know about it in a couple of weeks. This design build, the only way we could afford to do this civic portion, will be to the tune of we're not paying anything, we're getting a building turnkey, and there will be money left over. I say that's a good deal.
I guess the question is the actual dollars and cents.
Mm-hmm. $200 a square foot, would you consider it a good deal? How much did they pay for Walnut Creek? What was that library? Over 400? I don't want to put it that way, but you know these numbers, Dan. I've watched you. You know that if you could get something at $200 a square foot, you've got a good deal. That permit center police station that we purchased is $1.38 a square foot. We make good transactions. We have a history of it, and this is going to be another one. Now, until every I is dotted and every T is crossed, I'm not going to tell you what it is today, but I will tell you before the end of this election, you will get it.
Dave, let me ask you.
Mm-hmm.
Is the deal on the table now different than the deal on the table 5 years ago?
Yes,
And how is it better or worse?
better. I say better because 3 different people or different council members tend to have different ideas, and we have a couple of council members. But they like the idea that's proposed now,
Okay,
and the
let me-
idea is to
let me
move it
ask you-
forward.
Let me ask you, 5 years ago, you were ready to go with that deal.
Yes. And it would have worked out the same way, but what you're not saying, Dan, is 5 years ago, we had the stop, fail safe, that you had to show the final financials before it proceeded. And you'll do the same thing this year. But the one that we have now is even better.
Renee,
So let me sneak back here in 2 weeks and tell you what it is.
sneak back in 2 weeks. You know my phone number.
Unfortunately, you know mine too. And we'll call it in 2 weeks and 1 minute.
Renee.
Yes, the city center, you know, as I also walk precincts, everybody says the same thing. When is the city center going to happen? We need a place that is ours instead of going into Danville or into Dublin areas. And I think the residents will be very happy to see a city center. I think we need to be thoughtful of what goes into the city center with regards to merchants and restaurants. I think with regards to the housing that is there, it will help for people to stay, hopefully, and afford housing and stay within our own community, such as teachers and waiters and people that work at, shopping, grocery stores. And I think that's what we want to do. We want to be able to have employees stay within their own town when they work. In addition, if those outlying neighbors can just walk, hopefully, to that city center, and therefore there will be hopefully less congestion.
Okay, so what are you looking for in the finances?
I'm sorry?
What are you looking for in the financial deal?
In the financial deal itself, with regards to
City center.
the city center, I have not looked at those numbers. I'm still familiarizing myself, as I mentioned earlier, with pension, budget, and city center numbers. And I will do my due diligence to learn all of that. That is, I think, part of my job as I move forward into this campaign.
Thomas?
Yes, sir. City Center? Well, as you know from my candidate statement, I think it's too big. And if it's going to be implemented, it needs to be phased in. First, let me comment on something that Mr. Sachs said, which is news to me, and that is that a portion of the Bishop Ranch is not part of the city, if that is correct.
Correct.
Is that correct?
No.
I'm sorry?
No, he
No.
did say it, but no.
It's not correct?
No.
Okay, good. That would have been outrageous.
Well, at one point it wasn't part of the
Yes,
city.
Right. and
it was
that's-
annexed in, that's what he was trying to say.
Okay, good. I too have spoken to a lot of people about the city center, and they share my opinion that a city center should be built, and they invariably thought what I thought initially, which is that it's gonna be built on that vacant property at the corner of Granger and Camino Ramon. But that's only 20% of it. And when I inform them to go to the website and check out the extent, invariably they agree with me that it is way too big, a massive project that is going to transform and urbanize San Ramon, creating a lot of traffic congestion, increasing demands for nearby housing, which will then increase demands for another 680 interchange to handle all the traffic. It is a triple threat. I'm opposed to all three of them. I want a city center.
Plus all three,
All three of those proposals. The current city center, as large as it is, I'd like to see it scaled way back. And I'm opposed to any high-density housing at all, and especially in that area. And of course, I'm opposed also to a new 680 interchange. Now, I know the city center has been approved, it's negotiated, I guess it was approved by the city center years ago, by the city council years ago. But I also think Sunset Development is gonna realize they have to live with the city and work with us, and that there's a way to renegotiate. And that would be one of the things that I would hope I could get other council members to agree to and take that approach. But it is, to me, the linchpin of the future of San Ramon. We're either gonna become another Walnut Creek, and I like Walnut Creek, but San Ramon is not in that situation. And, or we're going to stay a predominantly residential, limited commercial city. And if I may just add a comment,
a residential, limited, give me that word, how do you?
a primary residential and limited commercial community.
With all due respect, isn't that cat already out of the bag, or the horse out of the barn, or whatever analogy you want to use?
Don't try to be country, Dan.
Berkeley
Dan,
boy.
help me out. You know.
There are no farms in Berkeley, Dan.
Yeah, there, yeah.
And the
Well,
answer is
like
yes, it is.
Yogi Berra said, it ain't over till it's over, and the city center isn't built until it's built.
Okay.
And so I think there are opportunities. It's a matter of negotiation.
Let's move to and let's start with you, Thomas. What should happen with Tasahara Valley, and what should the city's interest in it be? What should the city's interest and or position be?
Well, you know, I know there's some further development proposed there. I haven't studied all of that, but I know there's I forgot the name of it, I believe there's a cemetery and another high-density development or clustered home development proposed, and my initial reaction is opposed to those, but I haven't focused on them.
Let me ask you, how'd you vote on Measure W?
Measure W?
Yeah,
No.
you voted no on Measure. Okay.
Yeah, that was the expansion of the urban boundaries, and I voted against that, yes, along with all my neighbors.
Harry, you were a big supporter of Measure W.
I was a big supporter. We got a nice butt kicking in that one. It really, I think, sent a real message going forward that a few takeaways from that. Number one, when voters don't understand something, they're going to vote against it. Number two, the voters in their way were saying no more development east of Doherty Valley. And for me, the big takeaway was we as a city need to be able to dialogue better with the conservation groups to understand what their concerns were on that, because we may not have changed the outcome, but that dialogue should have been there. And so in the past several years, I've made it a point to really educate myself. Hey, what are these people? What are their concerns? What is the Sierra Club? What does Save Mount Diablo on that valley? What do they care about out there?
2 words.
Yeah.
Tom Koch.
Tom Koch. You've pretty much got that right. And so to answer your question about the cemetery, one word on that: water. You're going to have to figure out a way to get water and either take it from existing landowners, whatever it's going to be. I don't think that's necessary.
So where are you at now? You supported Measure W.
I did support it, and it was really for the local control issue, and I think that would not have been a bad thing, but I think what the public did was send a message that we don't trust the decision makers to not overdevelop it, because they saw what happened to Doherty Valley, even though that was a county development. But on Doherty Valley is the classic example of, in essence, lose-lose. You had conservation and environmental groups, you had the cities, you had the developer, you had the county. They couldn't come up with a compromise. They went to the lawsuit cards. In the end of the day, it got overbuilt.
So where
am I now?
Where are you on Tasahara Valley?
So on Tasahara Valley, preserve it, leave it alone. The citizens, obviously, the residents don't want it they don't want it within their urban limits. We need to leave it alone. We don't need to develop in that valley. And in terms of the cemetery, again, water issue. I don't think it's feasible. So no development in Tasahara Valley, and I've stated that in my candidate statement as well.
Dave?
Which one of those are you asking first?
Well, you were a big supporter of Measure W.
Well, I still am. I would prefer that we had the choice in Measure W, and clearly we don't. I want to correct something Harry said. Doherty Valley wasn't being developed by the county. It is being developed by the county. We don't make any money out of Doherty Valley. Tasahara is the same 168 homes or whatever it was when it was called New Farm. And it will probably go through with 30 acres. San Ramon would not allow it because we have a max of 25 acres. And as I was trying to say 2 or 3 years ago in a different office, even if we voted it into our urban growth boundary, we still could not develop without a specific plan. I think I line up pretty close to Harry on this. I think the people have spoken. They don't want anything out there.
You voted into your urban growth boundary.
Mhm.
You could
We could not.
Could not what? Develop?
We could not develop it without a specific plan. That's what I was talking about 2 years ago, a week before the election, 4 years ago. We can't do it. It's part of our citizen design general plan. We're different than everyone else, Dan. We can't develop 25 acres. But I can tell you right now, the whole thing's mute if One Bay Area stands, because we just voted that anything non-agricultural has to be developed inside the urban growth boundary, and the baseline is 2010. So if that stands up of what we just voted in for our SCS, what we're talking about is pretty much mute. It's just going to be a lawsuit, and I'm taking the understanding that I read from Jeremy Madsen of Greenbelt Alliance. He sees it the same way I do. We just voted all non-agricultural development inside the urban growth boundary, 100%. And if that's the case, everything we're talking about won't get developed.
So if you had to vote on Measure W again today, you'd support it?
I would support it being in San Ramon. And remember, that doesn't mean we could develop what's out there right now.
Let me make sure I understand the antecedent. The antecedent, you would support it being, my question is, would you support Measure W?
Measure W is our general plan. It's not just the urban growth boundary, it's the general plan. No, wait, Dan. It's the general plan that a 32-person citizen committee voted in 2002. And we would have made it effective for another 10 years. What the people voted for, 80%, would have been effective for 30 years instead of 20. Yeah, I'd vote for it.
Renee?
I was a no on W, not to break the urban growth boundaries, to keep our land, our space. I am not wanting to see any growth in the Tasahara Valley. I have the same concerns as Harry with regards to water, sewage. I think once they put water in there, if that would happen, that just leaves room for more growth.
Been a bunch of discussion about this interchange, the HOV interchange. Seems to keep coming back. Well, here, before we go to that for a second, hold on 1 second here. Quickly, I get the council lowered or set the campaign cap. It's all voluntary. Who's gonna abide by it here?
I am.
So to what?
The campaign contribution cap.
Cap? I agree to it.
Everyone's agreeing to it, okay. Can dismiss it then. Okay, so going to the HOV line.
Wife would kill me.
Fine.
Wife would kill me.
Sleeping in the same dog house.
Okay, so Thomas, you seem to be the leader of the charge, or a leader of this charge on the HOV lane. What is your concern here?
I'm not the leader on the charge.
Okay,
There are some
HOV
citi-
interchange.
Yeah, there are citizens
You
that
don't
live
want,
in
let's to be clear, you don't want any interchange, right?
new interchange in
You don't-
San
yeah.
Ramon, correct.
For you, the issue is not where it's located, it's you don't want one, period.
Well, of all the locations, that would be the worst for me, because I don't live too far from there, for one thing. So it would hit too close to home, but I don't want any new interchange in San Ramon.
Because?
Well, specifically at the Norris Canyon location, I think it's too close to the existing Crow Canyon and Bollinger interchanges, and would inevitably lead to an expansion of Norris Canyon in both directions. A lot of people already take Crow Canyon, Norris, and Bollinger as bypasses to get out to Livermore and back and forth. I think that's a substantial risk there. I think there's also safety issues, especially the way the interchange is proposed on the website with the center lanes coming up. That just doesn't make sense to me. But
It's done all over the state.
center lane exits,
Yeah.
Bloom, I think, is
where?
in Richmond.
Well, yeah.
All right,
yeah, Richmond, I
I'm
know.
not familiar with that one.
Yeah.
I have seen them
Bay Bridge
in
approach.
some places,
Bay Bridge approach going south on the east shore.
but not for an exit like, well, whatever, it's not, I don't think it's very good. I think
Okay.
it's unsafe, and in any event, I don't think there's enough room there, and I'm opposed to it. And I'm opposed to another new interchange in San Ramon for the same reasons. I think it would have a disastrous effect on the people living around there and their property values.
What about you, Renee?
After reading reports and talking to citizens, I do have concerns of the HOV ramps, both at Norris and Executive Parkway.
Concerns both the where? I'm sorry.
Both at the Norris Canyon and proposed Executive Parkway.
What do you mean you have
With regards to
concerns?
safety of pedestrians and bicyclists, noise,
What's the safety of
The-
peds and bicyclists?
the exit right there, I think it's if it's Executive Parkway, it's not that wide. And I know there's already been issues and accidents with
Okay.
pedestrians and bicyclists off of the Norris Canyon, even without that HOV there, ramp there. So again, just those type of concerns. $102 million, is that warranting what we need there? I think the council would not be doing their job, though, to say that we do need to do something with regards to traffic. But at this point, I think the process is also, there's an EIR that hasn't come out yet. And I believe that it's our job to also look at that before making a decision.
Dave?
I wish people would stop calling it an interchange. I guess technically it is. It's the HOV ramps to the middle of an existing overpass. An overpass that doesn't have lighting, an overpass that only has pedestrian on one side. That will be changed if Norris Canyon goes forward. There will never be an Executive Parkway, period. I don't care if you put flowers on the support letter or whatever you do, there's no way it will go through a cost-benefit analysis at MTC, and Measure J does not fund $100 million projects entirely. This is one of the two highest priorities in CCTA, yet the executive director pulled it for an EIR because there was concerns by the citizens. Now, if the citizens look at the impacts without doing it and the impacts by doing it, take a look at the North Camino Ramon, is that what we call that thing? The specific plan, what it will look like when it's built, and still decide that they don't want it, we will, I'm sure, everyone here and everyone's on the council now will write a letter of no support. What we're asking is take this second chance, take the time, look at it with the EIR. I almost
Good
couldn't
idea,
get
Dave.
here.
So you think it's a good idea?
What? Norris?
The-
I think that it is the only idea we should be looking at, and I think if we look at all the facts,
HOV at Norris.
yes, that there is no Executive Parkway. It will never happen, period. It's simply an
And you think the
alternative to measure
HOV at
against.
Norris is not only the only idea, but a good idea?
I think it's a good idea until I see an EIR that proves to me that it isn't. But then I've had 10 years to look at it. I didn't come up with this idea. I'm sorry it was not mine. You can't blame me for it. But I think that when you look at the EIR, I've asked people to go to Camino Ramon at 4 o'clock. Well, I can tell you, go look at it at 1:45 because I almost didn't get here trying to get out of City Hall traffic. It's already backed up from Crow to Norris on Camino Ramon. Car bumper to bumper. And if we don't do something, we're going to have problems. As far as the traffic people are worried about going down Norris, Dan, it's existing right now. And they're going to add what do we say, 1,124 homes in North Camino Ramon, 600 at City Center. So yeah, it's a pretty good, plus we're putting transit centers at both of them.
Barry?
So I've come out in opposition. The closest thing right now in terms of the facts are the traffic impact reports of 2009. And a lot of that data is going to go into the environmental impact report. So my concerns, similar to what was said earlier with regard to residential impacts, the noise, the lighting, but my big thing in looking at it is you're looking to serve potentially 8 to 13% on a good day riders getting into the HOV lane. The benefit that CCTA and Caltrans are touting is that we're going to eliminate weaving for buses getting over to the HOV lane. It's going to be direct access. You're going to save about 100 seconds of queuing time at Crow Canyon and Bollinger Canyon. Okay, those are the two primary benefits that are listed there. What about the impacts, and do those benefits outweigh the impacts? The report says that there will be spillback onto the local streets. Now you have San Ramon Valley Boulevard, and then you have Norris Canyon on and off ramps. There will be spillbacks. Number two, that's the only direct unimpeded east-west artery in San Ramon that's not freeway ramped. San Ramon Regional Medical Center is over here, West Side residents are over here. So I have concerns about emergency access, being able to take that street unimpeded with regards to freeway traffic. Are there traffic issues in San Ramon? Yes. I think
So suffice to say you are
I
opposed
am
to it.
I am very much opposed to it. And here's where I think new leadership is valuable. This has been in the pipeline for 10 years. It was part of the reauthorization of Measure J. Yes, it was hidden down there. It wasn't touted, okay, we're going to do this. But up until recently, this has really come to the public's attention. I think our council back then just said, look, we have this issue. We know that this would be a game changer. It wasn't vetted by the residents up until recently when they started to do the mandatory community outreach. Where was our council 5-6 years ago saying, let's start holding community meetings now and start educating them about the benefits? Now that doesn't necessarily mean it would change my opinion, but what it does say is when you have something like this that has definite impacts to 10,000 homes on the west side,
Okay,
shouldn't
so-
you at least clue your residents in that, hey, this is coming down the pike? I mean, it went through the government labyrinth and now here we are.
Okay, so I want one final question, then we're gonna call it a day here. And let's start with you, Harry. What was the takeaway from the tenure of Herb Moniz for you?
Residents, for the most part, are very happy with San Ramon. And my takeaway was that Herb was someone who was willing to work with different groups to get things done. He always had the residents' best interest in mind. Unfortunately, Herb's tenure is tainted by the compensation issue. At the end of the day, best practices, and there's a lot of debate and dialogue. I know Dave is going to disagree with me on this, but what we did with Greg Rogers, our current city manager, is probably what we should have done with Herb Moniz. What is the management compensation with regards to other municipalities, and let's stay within it. Even though Herb, and most people will tell you, San Ramon is a wonderful place to live. For many reasons, you know, I know, we all know. So Herb has to be credited for that. But unfortunately, he is tainted by the compensation issue, and this is where you say, hey, what are other municipalities paying their management? We should fall in line with this. And
Thomas?
there you go.
Well, I've never met the man, and I don't have any details about what he's actually done or his positions, because obviously I'm not a city hall insider in that. But I will say this, that if a city manager is effective in helping me to achieve my goals of keeping San Ramon residential and limited commercial, and scaling back the city center and the other goals I have, he would be well worth what Herb Minoz has been compensated. And I wouldn't quibble with that. People who get results that benefit the community should be fairly compensated. I'm sure he's worked hard. I'm just not sure whether he has worked towards goals that I share. So I have no comment on that.
Renee?
I think we can go backwards. All we have to do is move forward and learn from what is out in the open now, and monitor and be as transparent in the future as possible.
Okay, what'd you learn?
With regards to
Monies.
money,
You said all we can do is learn. What
learn,
did you learn from that episode?
just learn on payment, watch who's getting paid what, and learn from that, just like as you earlier stated, talking about pensions and salaries.
So help me understand, so you learned that,
That we just need to be aware of what city managers are doing and how they're being compensated.
Does that suggest that the previous council wasn't aware?
No.
no, it does not suggest, or no, they were not aware?
It does not suggest that. I think, I think the other thing is, I think consistency also is important with council members into looking at each city manager. And I think that's what's hard, because it changes so much, and that's with plans or things, I think everybody has to be privy on what happened on that last council, and, don't go in, you have to look at those plans and know what happened prior, and to continue to learn.
So Dave,
Excuse me. I want to make sure I'm not missing some scandal or something. Is this just about how much he was compensated? Or is there some scandal about him that I'm not aware of? That you're asking?
we can talk offline, we can talk later.
Okay. I haven't seen anything like that.
Dave, how much?
Yeah,
how
we can
much-
talk too. What do we?
How much, were you aware of A, what he was being compensated, and B, what his pension was?
Been on the city council for 16 years. The city's 30 years old. I'm aware of what Herb Moniz was making, and I'm aware of what he was making and what Joe Calabriga was making a year before you guys put out your surveys. They were within $1,000 of each other. As is pointed out here, where are we going from this point forward after Herb?
Well, no, but here's my question.
Which I answered.
You were aware of what his salary was. Were you aware of what his pension implications of that salary were?
Very much so. It's my understanding that the Contra Costa Times did a story of people making $200,000 in their retirement, and some people making $300,000 in retirement. So we're clear, Herb Moniz is not on either one of those lists. What's really important, and it bothers me, Dan, and I'm going to say it because you never reported it, the city's 27 years old. For 25 of 27 years, Herb Moniz and or Byron Athen were at City Hall. And the most money we ever paid those two employees was when neither of them was here. We only hire two people, the city attorney and the city manager. And I'll bet you if you'd researched it, Herb Moniz and Byron Athen were never in the top 100 cities in California of compensation. Our current city manager and city attorney aren't in the top 200. What's significant is San Ramon's the 108th largest city in the state. Yet I've never heard this, and what really bothers me is we've never had the highest paid city manager, but we've had the lowest, and I've never read that. I think that's enough for about a minute, but I'm sure you'll have another question for me.
No, I think you had the highest paid city manager.
We have never had the highest paid city manager per the Contra Costa Times. What you wrote in your endorsement was the League of California Cities did a survey, and 90% of the surveys responded. League of California Cities is not all the cities, too, Dan. There are 50 or 55
And where-
cities you
and-
never heard from.
And where did he rank in that survey?
He ranked about $1,000 higher than Joe the last time I saw it.
Where did
But
he
where
rank?
they ranked in the survey of the people that responded, he was the highest.
Okay.
But that was total compensation, and the other cities did not turn in all their total compensation. But the ones that were higher didn't respond. He was well paid. In fact, I would go so far as to say overpaid, but we needed him more than he needed us. We needed that city center, and I consider it that important.